Beneath Los Angeles's calm, sprawling streets, something massive is shifting. 25,000 feet down, a hidden fault is suddenly waking up, squeezing the city from below. Scientists once relied on the San Andreas, but new data reveals a blind threat capable of erupting with no warning. Could millions be living atop an earthquake risk no one can see? The clues and the stakes are buried deeper than anyone expected. Los Angeles stretches across a vast level plain, a city of boulevards, palm-lined avenues, and endless neighborhoods, all bordered by jagged mountain walls. The San Gabriel Mountains rise to the north, the Santa Monica Range to the west, and the San Bernardino Peaks loom farther east. From above, the city seems to float in a giant bowl, its surface so smooth and unbroken that it is easy to forget the land is anything but stable. But this calm is an illusion. The basin's flatness is not the sign of peace, but the surface expression of a complex geological story unfolding far below. For millions of years, the ground beneath Los Angeles has been shaped by forces far more powerful than anything built on top. The city sits in a unique tectonic crossroads, where the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate grind past each other. Northwest of the city, the San Andreas Fault takes a sharp bend, forcing these massive slabs of crust not just to slide, but to crush together. That bend acts like a giant vice, squeezing the region from both sides. Over time, that pressure has folded and stacked the Earth's crust into the mountain ranges that ring the city, while the center has sagged and filled with layer upon layer of sediment washed down from the heights. What looks like endless, buildable flatland is actually the top of a buried landscape, ancient hills and valleys now smothered under thousands of feet of sand, silt, and clay. Those sediments, in some places, reach depths of more than 3 miles. The city's famous palm-lined avenues and glass towers rest on a surface that is, geologically speaking, just the latest coat of paint on a canvas that has been torn, warped, and patched over and over by earthquakes and slow-motion tectonic warping. The mystery is not just why the city is so flat, but what lies beneath that smooth surface. Scientists have long known that the visible mountains are only half the story. The real action happens out of sight, deep underground, where the crust is being squeezed, folded, and broken by forces no one can see from above. This hidden world is mapped not by the eye, but by instruments such as seismographs, deep drilling rigs, and the scattered clues left by oil wells reaching down through the layers. The flatness of Los Angeles is not a sign of safety. It is the quiet mask of a restless, shifting underworld, one that holds secrets and dangers that are only now beginning to come into focus. Beneath the city's calm surface, the ground tells a story that is almost impossible to imagine from above. Instead of a single flat slab, the crust under Los Angeles is a layered graveyard of ancient hills, valleys, and mountains, all buried beneath thousands of feet of sediment. Over millions of years, rivers pouring out of the surrounding ranges carried sand and clay into the basin, slowly entombing a rugged landscape that once rose and fell like a miniature mountain range. This thick blanket of sediment, in places over 3 miles deep, now hides some of the most complex and dangerous geological features in North America. Hidden within this darkness is a fault unlike the ones that carve obvious scars across the countryside. Geologists call it a blind thrust, a fault that never breaks the surface, but instead pushes and folds the rock layers deep underground. The most notorious of these, the Puente Hills blind thrust, lies directly beneath the heart of Los Angeles. Its upper edge is buried about 3 to 5 kilometers below the city, far deeper than any subway tunnel or foundation. There are no cracks or ridges to betray its presence. Its existence was revealed only through painstaking analysis of seismic waves, oil well logs, and the painstaking warping of buried rock layers. The geometry of this fault is as unsettling as it is invisible. Instead of running straight up and down, it slopes gently upward, like a giant ramp hidden beneath the city. As the crust is squeezed by tectonic forces, the ramp drives rock layers up and over each other, folding them into broad, gentle arches that no one can see from the surface. These folds, mapped in cross-section using seismic reflection profiles, stretch for miles beneath downtown Los Angeles and out toward the southeast. The fault itself is estimated to run for at least 40 kilometers, with segments that may link up in unpredictable ways. Oil companies searching for trapped hydrocarbons were the first to glimpse these buried folds. Their drilling records and seismic images revealed sedimentary layers that were not flat, but bent and stacked in ways that only made sense if a hidden force was at work. It was only in the late 20th century that scientists realized these folds were the fingerprints of an active, buried fault system. The Puente Hills blind thrust does not announce itself with dramatic cliffs or rifts, but with the slow, relentless warping of the ground far below the city's streets. What makes this fault so dangerous is not just its size or depth, but its total invisibility. Unlike surface faults, it offers no warning signs, no offset roads, no broken fences, no visible trace at all. Its presence is betrayed only by the subtle bending of rock layers and the patterns of earthquakes that ripple through the region. For the millions of people living above it, the Puente Hills blind thrust is a hidden hazard, buried beneath layers of time and stone, waiting in silence. Its discovery changed the way scientists understand risk in Los Angeles, turning a vague sense of mystery into a concrete, if unsettling, reality. Earthquakes are not just sudden jolts that catch a city off guard. They are the final act of a long, hidden process, a slow buildup of strain deep underground. In Los Angeles, the Puente Hills blind thrust fault is quietly storing energy, pressed by the relentless squeeze of tectonic plates. When that energy is finally released, it travels upward through layers of rock and sediment, shaking everything in its path. Scientists estimate these events could reach between 6 and 7 on the moment magnitude scale. But the real danger is not just the size of the quake, it is how the ground itself responds. Los Angeles sits atop a thick blanket of soft sediments, some stretching more than 3 miles deep. These sediments act like a giant amplifier. When seismic waves hit, they slow down and grow stronger, rattling the surface far more violently than if the city rested on solid bedrock. In some neighborhoods, shaking can be 2 to 5 times more intense than in the surrounding mountains. This amplification is not a guess. It is a measured, repeatable effect. After the 1987 Whittier Narrows earthquake, instruments across the basin recorded shaking that was far greater in the softest areas, especially where the basin is deepest. Understanding this hidden threat requires more than surface observations. Geologists and seismologists have developed a toolkit for peering into the earth. Seismic reflection surveys, originally designed for the oil industry, send sound waves deep into the ground and record the echoes as they bounce off different rock layers. Each layer reflects the signal differently, creating a kind of underground map. By combining these profiles with data from oil and groundwater wells where actual rock samples and formation tops are logged, scientists can tie the seismic images to real geology. This process, known as a well tie, anchors the abstract waveforms to physical layers, turning blurry echoes into precise maps of faults and folds. The work does not stop there. Modern seismic arrays with hundreds of sensors scattered across the city capture the subtle vibrations of both natural earthquakes and controlled blasts. These networks record not just the main shocks, but the thousands of tiny aftershocks and background tremors that trace the shape of the active fault plane. By relocating these events with advanced algorithms and tying them to the three-dimensional models built from seismic and well data, researchers can map the geometry of the Puente Hills Fault in remarkable detail. They can see where it ramps upward, where it bends, and where different segments might slip together in a future quake. Academic seismologists play a central role in this detective work. Their models are not static diagrams, but living tools, constantly updated as new data arrives. Each earthquake, each well drilled, and each new survey sharpens the picture. The result is a risk assessment grounded in physical evidence, a hidden fault capable of producing magnitude 6 to 7 earthquakes, lying just a few kilometers below one of the world's largest cities, with shaking amplified by the very ground that made the city possible. The science turns the invisible into the visible, translating deep geology into the numbers and maps that guide preparedness and policy. Oil has always been part of Los Angeles' story, but few realize how much it owes its existence to the invisible forces shaping the ground beneath the city. Early petroleum geophysicists, hunting for new fields in the 1920s and the 1930s, noticed something odd in their drilling records. Rock layers that should have been flat, instead arched upward, then dipped again like waves frozen in stone. These broad folds, mapped well below the surface, became the first tangible clues that something powerful was at work, out of sight. A hidden engine reshaping the basin from below. The folds do more than bend rock. They create traps, structural pockets where oil and gas, generated deep within organic-rich sediments, migrate upward until they hit an impermeable barrier. Once trapped, these hydrocarbons accumulate in reservoirs that became the backbone of Los Angeles' oil boom. Fields like Wilmington and Long Beach, among the most productive in North America, owe their fortunes to these underground arches. Every barrel of oil pumped from beneath the city is a direct consequence of slow, relentless tectonic squeezing, folding the Earth's crust into shapes that capture ancient sunlight turned to fuel. But the evidence is not limited to what comes out of a well. Sometimes the pressure below finds its own path to the surface. The La Brea tar pits are a dramatic example. Thick, black asphalt bubbling up through cracks in the ground, carrying with it the bones of animals trapped thousands of years ago. These seeps trace the migration of oil and gas along fractures and subtle folds, surface reminders that the ground beneath Los Angeles is still restless, still leaking the products of buried geological violence. Yet the tar pits do not point to a single master fault. Instead, they reveal a region-wide system of folds and fractures, all shaped by the same forces that drive blind thrusts deep below. Not all clues are sticky or dark. The Palos Verdes Peninsula, rising abruptly from the South Bay, stands as a silent marker of tectonic uplift. Its rocky spine is the crest of a fold formed by the Palos Verdes Fault Zone, a local structure, but one that speaks to the bigger story. Here, the land itself has been pushed upward over millions of years, lifted by the same compressional regime that warps the basin floor. The peninsula's presence, along with other subtle hills and ridges scattered across the region, hints at the hidden architecture below. A city built atop a landscape that is anything but flat. Petroleum geophysicists, armed with seismic profiles and well logs, have become detectives in this underground world. By tracing the shapes of folded rock and mapping the locations of oil seeps and uplifted blocks, they piece together the puzzle of Los Angeles's buried faults. Each data point, a bent layer, a pocket of oil, a tar seep, anchors the abstract science of deep geology in the reality of the city above. The clues are everywhere if you know where to look, in the slow rise of the land, in the sticky pools of ancient tar, and in the wealth hidden beneath the city's streets. Together they reveal a restless underworld, shaping Los Angeles in ways that most residents will never see. but which define the ground they walk on every day. At 4:31 in the morning on January 17, 1994, the ground beneath the San Fernando Valley convulsed with a violence that caught everyone off guard. The Northridge earthquake struck without warning, its epicenter buried 18 kilometers below the surface on a fault that no one had mapped. The shaking lasted less than 20 seconds, but in that brief window, entire neighborhoods were transformed. Freeways buckled and collapsed. Apartment buildings pancaked onto themselves. Fires broke out as gas lines snapped. In the aftermath, 57 people lost their lives. More than 8,700 were injured. The financial cost soared past $40 billion, making Northridge the most expensive earthquake disaster in United States history at the time. For residents, the experience was raw and unforgettable. One survivor described waking to the sound of glass shattering and the sensation of the floor rising up in a single violent heave. Another recalled stumbling through darkness, the air thick with dust as furniture crashed down around her. The city's iconic infrastructure, freeways, hospitals, shopping centers, proved shockingly vulnerable. Entire sections of Interstate 5 and Highway 14 twisted and fell. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses were left without power or water for days. Scientists quickly realized the quake had originated on a blind thrust fault, one hidden deep beneath the valley's surface, invisible to the naked eye. The event shattered the illusion that only surface faults posed a real danger. Northridge proved that a buried fault unknown until it broke could devastate a modern city in moments. The lesson was impossible to ignore. Los Angeles was built atop a network of silent threats, and the next rupture could strike anywhere, at any time. Beneath the daily rhythm of Los Angeles, scientists confront a puzzle that grows more urgent with every new dataset. The Puente Hills blind thrust is only one part of a tangled network of faults running beneath the city, and no one can say with certainty how each segment connects or where the next rupture will begin. The stakes are enormous. More than 10 million people live and work directly above this shifting ground. For city resilience engineers, the challenge is not just theoretical. Every new high-rise, hospital, or transit line must be designed with an incomplete map of the dangers below. Building codes have tightened, but the unknowns remain stubborn. Research teams are working to close the gap. Dense seismic arrays now blanket Los Angeles neighborhoods, recording the faintest tremors and mapping the subtle echoes that reveal hidden structures. New instruments, some no bigger than a coffee mug, are installed on streetlights, in schools, and even in subway tunnels, feeding a stream of data to university labs and city agencies. Each tremor, each background vibration, helps refine the three-dimensional models of the fault network underfoot. Yet the geometry of these faults remains elusive. In some places, segments may be only loosely connected. In others, a rupture could cascade from one to the next, multiplying the damage. The urgency is not just scientific. For engineers like Maria Torres, who oversees seismic safety for critical infrastructure in Los Angeles, every unanswered question is a risk that must be managed. She describes the work as a race against time, updating models, running simulations, and coordinating with researchers to translate new findings into practical defenses. The city's future depends on this uneasy partnership between science and engineering, as teams push to understand the invisible hazards before the ground moves again. Today, nearly 4 million people live above invisible fractures, faults that science is still racing to define. With every new seismic reading, the boundaries shift. Los Angeles isn't just a city on a map, it is a living experiment in risk, resilience, and uncertainty. The ground beneath us is never truly still, and neither is the search for answers. What would you want to know before the next tremor strikes?